fine. I've got to preach tomorrow at church as well, so if I'm still talking by tomorrow lunchtime, I'll be doing okay. I've got some water. That was the other reason. Let's find these. So I love statistics. I'm a bit of a stats geek, so I'm going to give you some more research results in a moment. Okay, so just over a year ago, November 2021, we did some research and we surveyed nearly 600 Christians about their experience in the workplace. It was basically the research that helped us then develop the Living for Jesus at Work resources. We asked, do your colleagues know that you're a Christian? 18% said all of them do. 40% said most do. 33% said some do. And then only less than 8% said most don't or none do. So for most of these people, their colleagues, or at least some of them, know that they are Christians, which was encouraging. We asked, what factors, I'm going to ask this one back to you, what factors have prevented you telling your colleagues that you are a Christian? So what things do you think cropped up? I'm worried that people will take offence, was said by 13%. No. There might be. I suspect some people do think that. Judgment, I don't want people to make assumptions about me. Yeah, 20% of people said it doesn't seem appropriate for the workplace. But the biggest one, by more than half the people, just said there hasn't been the right opportunity to talk about it. And then 0.5%, which is literally 2 people, said, I've never wanted to tell my colleagues that I'm a Christian. 5% say, I'm worried it would limit my opportunities. But the main thing is people just don't feel like they've had the opportunity to do it. I think there's a bit of fear, there's a bit of concern about whether or not it's appropriate. But for most people, they just don't feel like they've had the opportunity. We asked, have you ever discussed a concern at work related to your Christian faith with your employer? And now 1 in 5 people have. Again, this is one of those things where you want to ask the next question was, well, what was that concern? I helped write the survey, so I probably should have changed it. But you want to know, well, what are those concerns? Was it about working on a Sunday? Was it about something someone had said that was unkind or aggressive around Christianity in general? Was it was it a policy that you have a problem with complying with? We don't know. But we did ask, how did it go? 44% of people said that they felt listened to and action was taken to rectify the situation, which is encouraging. 36% said they felt listened to, but nothing changed as a result, which actually is an interesting one for us to reflect on, because listening to people is important, but if people come away from a conversation like, well, they listened to me, but then nothing happened, actually, how helpful is that? 10% said they didn't feel listened to and they were dismissive of my concern, and other people, smaller numbers, said it was awkward and nothing changed. And then 2% said my opportunities were limited because of raising my concerns, which actually would be classed as victimisation under the Equality Act, if someone had wanted to do it. We asked, how often do you feel that you are in a position where you must prioritise your job over your faith? 60% of people said never. Never been in a position where they've had to prioritise their job over their faith. And then 18% said once or twice a year, 9% said every few months, 6% said at least once a month, 4% of people said every day. So I'd love to know what roles and positions those 4% of people are in. But there is a real spread there. There are some people who are feeling like that they were having to prioritise their work regularly. We also asked some kind of short response questions. We asked people how their employers viewed Christians. People said that sometimes Christians are viewed as not tolerant. They hold hateful or bigoted views. They think Christians dislike others. They think that Christians are narrow-minded and exclusive. But what's interesting is I talked earlier about the Talking Jesus research. In that survey, which was asked of the general public, not Christians, so this survey was of Christians, when we asked the general public what they thought about Christians and what they thought about the church, let me get the exact stats up, because this matters. Apologies for... I thought I had this document open. It's opening right now. Great, here we go. Talking Jesus. So it's the Talking Jesus report. This one. I decided I wasn't going to talk about this, and I've changed my mind. You're going to think these stats have got to be great after all this delay. Okay. So when people were asked to describe, when non-Christians were asked to describe a Christian they know, what do you think the attributes or characteristics used were? So this was surveying non-Christians about how they would describe Christians they know. So the top ones: friendly, caring, good-humoured, generous, hopeful, authentic, encouraging. And then at the bottom end of the spectrum were hypocritical, unhappy, naive, selfish, hurtful. Only 5% said homophobic, narrow-minded. So low numbers. We then asked how non-Christians describe the Christian church. And let's just say it got a lot more mixed. Number 1, narrow-minded. Number 2, hypocritical. Number 3, friendly. Number 4, caring. Number 5, homophobic. Number 6, hopeful. That's quite complicated. So people like Christians they know. Now that's the overall finding. When someone knows a Christian, they like them. They find them friendly, they find them generous, they find them caring. When they think about the church as an institution, they're much more likely to have more critical views of it. So we need to get to know more people. And we need to enable them to see us and not just an institution of the church. So when we think about the workplace, there are some laws and there is some useful case law around discrimination and employment matters, but being an ambassador for Christ in the workplace is what really matters. And I think that's what I want to emphasize, is that we are ambassadors for Christ in whatever position we're in our communities, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods. We have an opportunity for people to see and to experience what it is to follow Jesus. And that's something we should take really seriously. We should acknowledge that we're in our workplace to do our job. And that's what we should seek to do. We should seek to do that really well. I think we should see work as part of our vocation. I'm really passionate about this. I think sometimes the church has only ever really thought about vocation as Christian ministry. I think it's vital we see vocation as something people can do in every area, in every workplace, that you're a missionary in all these areas. There's a quote, I think it's by Charles Spurgeon, that you are either a missionary or an imposter. I think we can be missionaries. My sister said this. My sister's a doctor. She was like, if I went to India and was a doctor, I'd have a little postcard at the back of church and people would pray for me. The fact that I work for an inner city practice in Derby, I don't have a card on the back of the wall with people praying for me. That's just true. But I think we need, as Christians, to honour the roles that people have in workplaces and what they can contribute to those places. So I think there's work for us to do as individuals to live as ambassadors for Christ, but there's work to do as a church to just raise how we view people's roles in the workplace. LICC are a great organisation that do a lot of work around this. One of the little things that I've heard time and time again has really helped churches is just doing something really simple like interviewing people regularly on a Sunday, just 3 minutes. And even some churches call it this time tomorrow. It's 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning. What are you going to be doing at 11 a.m. on Monday morning? Just so people have an idea of what's going on in workplaces across their church congregation. The other thing is for church leaders to meet someone for lunch once a week in their congregation, go to their workplace, find out about what they're doing. Actually, just building those kind of connections. So the workplace is the place where we spend so much time. It's where we're going to build connections with people. And the numbers I said earlier is that people often don't know that people are Christians in the workplace. People often don't become Christian through workplace acquaintances. And I think we need to take responsibility, all of us, for improving that. It's come up multiple times that the context matters. Different professions have different responsibilities and different obligations. Some have quasi-legal responsibilities where you are in complicated positions where you do have to be careful about your position and how you use that position, both in your direct relationships with clients, but also with how you might be viewed in public. I think if you do take on, say for example, you're a magistrate, I think it's reasonable that you will be limited in what you said online, because actually how can you hold that role with credibility? So I think there are some roles that we might choose to take on where we accept that we can say less publicly. Now, it doesn't mean we can't speak privately or speak with friends, but there are just some common sense issues there. That's not necessarily discrimination. What's discrimination is when Christianity and the views that flow from Christianity are treated differently to other views. Again, we've been around this a few times, but it gets quite hard to offer specific advice for different professions, and even within professions it gets hard because you start getting into the particulars. I don't read all of them, but I often, when there are employment tribunals relating to Christians, I will often read them because they're often complex, and sometimes they find that someone was unfairly dismissed because of either their Christian faith or beliefs emanating from their faith, and on other occasions they were dismissed for other reasons. Now, they might have been a Christian, but the courts found that they were dismissed anyway. Now, some of those cases I think I found correctly, others I have questions about whether I follow the court's judgment or not. But these cases are complex, and that's really the point I'm trying to press there. Another thing that cropped up earlier was the importance of engaging with equality, diversity, and inclusion groups. I think it really is vital, and I've seen people achieve quite a lot of success. The two examples I'm really thinking of is with the civil service, someone who basically has got to be able to rewrite the faith and belief handbook for the whole of the civil service just because of long-term engagement in the faith forums and the equality and diversity groups in the civil service. And he's basically just seen it as his job, like his second job, to sit on all these forums, sit on all these groups, turn up at the meetings, because he's like, well, to be frank, other people turn up with other agendas, and I'm going to make sure I turn up. So he probably sat through an awful lot of really boring meetings, but it means that when they came to develop their faith and belief handbook, he was in a position to be the primary person inputting into that. And let's just say the faith and belief handbook is not perfect by any means, and he would accept that it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it could have been if he weren't in those roles. The other person is a senior partner of a big city law firm, and he helped us a lot with Speak Up as well. And he's taken the view, well, one, again, he's just got involved in a lot of things. And he's sat on panels, and when they've had Inclusion and Diversity Week, he's been like, yes, let's have a religion stand. Let's have a religion and belief stand. Let's work with the Christian Fellowship, and let's see if there's other faith groups that want to be involved as well who can help. And I think sometimes that's just being a bit savvy. So he knew that actually if he could get a Jewish group and a Muslim group, it was much more likely that they would be able to have a faith strand within the inclusion and diversity work. Whereas if he was just a Christian, he would be more likely to meet resistance. So actually sometimes we can be just being a bit clever sometimes about what's going to work and what's going to help. Another point there is that he has often reflected that in that context, as a senior partner, he can create space for more junior colleagues to speak about their faith. So he's someone, and because of legal structures, he's literally a partner in the firm, he can do things, and he's also like, it's like, if they really want to get rid of me, so what? Whereas for more junior people, actually I want to create the space, and by me sitting on a panel and talking with people, I can hopefully create a space that makes it easier for other people within the organisation to talk about their faith. And I thought that was a really wise comment, and I think a lot of places would benefit from thinking, actually, how do we create space for other people? We've talked quite a lot about schools work. I think schools work can be challenging. I think the risk of giving it up is greater, because I think if Christians have incredible access and incredible work within schools, I think we need to use that really wisely. We need to use it well. We need to be compassionate. We need to be open. We need to be highly professional, and ensure that as we are engaging in workplaces, we are creating opportunities for people to find out about Jesus, but also just to build good relationships with schools as well. Another thing that's come up a couple of times is making faith normal. It's, again, really important that in a workplace context, it becomes normal to talk about your Christian faith as soon as possible. No, it's not about walking in the door saying, hello, I'm Danny, I'm a Christian. But actually, in the course of your work, in the course of your conversations with your boss and with your colleagues, it being normal, the fact that you're a Christian, so that when there are potential conflicts, it doesn't surprise someone. It's not like, oh, I'm a Christian. Let's take Sundays. Oh, you scheduled me for a Sunday. I don't want to work on a Sunday. Why? Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, I never knew that before. Actually, the more normal we can make it to talk about faith, one, the easier it's going to be to talk about Jesus and to share faith, but also if there are potential conflicts, the easier it will be to resolve them, because people will potentially know where we're coming from. I've talked about contributing to God's mission. I think work's vital. One of the other things I'm involved in at the Evangelical Alliance is our public leadership program. We run this course every year. Currently we're doing 3 courses, one in England, one in Scotland, one in Northern Ireland, for a small group. I think there's 12 people on the course this year. 10 to 15 is the normal size. Usually between 25 and 35. It's a bit fuzzy, but it's aimed at kind of youngish professionals, or actually not professionals, people who are involved in leadership in any sector. It's based around 3 retreat weekends over the year, other training events, because we want Christians to take on leadership in all areas of society in politics, in business, in the media, in the arts. It's essential that we are involved in all those areas. Right, I've got to the section in my notes that says navigating tricky issues. Okay, so when we started talking about Christianity in the workplace, there were two motivating things that started our work. And really it was, well, one really. We got a bunch of emails from people asking questions about their Christianity in their workplace and issues they were potentially facing. As we went to talk to businesses about speak up and start sharing your faith, people came to us with questions and said, but what about this? So not so much about sharing your faith, but about other issues that arose in the workplace. At one point, we were going to call this resource pride and pronouns, but then we decided that might be a bit provocative. We also wanted to build it out a lot more, because there's an awful lot more to being a Christian in the workplace than navigating pride and pronouns. We talk about them in the resource, and I'm going to talk about them now, because they are real and they are presenting challenges, but they are not the most important thing about being a Christian in the workplace. I think being an ambassador for Christ, doing your job well, sharing your faith, those are the things that we really want to prioritise in the workplace. But these issues are coming up. Pronouns come up in two ways. They come up in terms of what you put on yours. People say, organisations want everyone to put their pronouns in their signature on their email. Do you do it? Do you not? I really think people can just decide what they want to do on this one. On that one, some people don't want to do it because they consider that it is indicative of a cultural shift that they don't want to support. And I get that. I do get it. Other people take the view that, well, I can put he, him in my pronoun, and that's who I am. Now, it should be obvious to anyone, but it doesn't hurt me to put that in my email signature. So that's the easier part of it. The harder part of it is how you refer to people who want to be referred to in a way that you might disagree with. And again, this is a fun one. Sometimes you might just not know. It is possible some trans people, if they've always presented as a woman and you refer to them as a she, you've always referred to them as a she. And actually, that's just how you know them. And I think, to be honest, if that's how you've always known them, that's probably what I would call them. It gets harder when you're in a context where someone changes. And someone does say, actually, I want to be known as she, her, or he, him, and you know them as the other. Or I'm non-binary, can you call me they, or there, or z? It does get harder. And I also think there's the legal protection that is starting to be built, that belief about biological sex is protected. And I think that's important. I think that is important because I think particularly in relation to how we engage with younger people, I think there are challenges in terms of schools around this, but I think we should be able to speak with integrity to what we believe about how people are created. I think in a workplace colleague-to-colleague context, I think people will reach different conclusions around how to navigate it. Often people will just try and use someone's name and say, actually, I'm going to try and avoid the pronouns, I'm just going to use your name where I can. It can get a bit ridiculous sometimes if you do that too much, because you suddenly realise how much you do use she or her or he or him. Because actually I think often you do have to make a choice, and I think Christians will legitimately land in different places on this. Some will take the view that actually what I believe is really important, and I would be compromising my integrity to say something that I don't believe to be true. And I think that is an important point. I also think it's an important point to say that someone you have an ongoing relationship with, will you serve that relationship by calling them something they don't want to be called? And that, personally, is probably where I land, is anyone I haven't, and like I think younger people are different, I think children are different, but I think an adult I have an ongoing relationship with, I will call them what they want to be called and use the pronouns they want to use. But like I know other Christians disagree, and I've had heated conversations with other Christians around this, and I understand why they reach different conclusions. My approach is, actually, I'm going to prioritize the relationship because I think that's how I can continue to serve and witness to them over the longer term. So that's pronouns, lanyards, and pride. Particularly people who work for big organizations, say the police or big corporations, Barclays Bank, if you work, or education institutions, and now gradually getting into more and more workplaces, you will come across issues around pride. Whether it's lanyards or taking part in activities, and it does present challenges. Are you going to wear the rainbow lanyard, or are you going to not? I really, really do think this is a conscience issue. I think Christians will land in different places. I've heard some Christians say, I won't, because actually that's a symbol of something I want to distance myself from. I know other Christians say that I am open about what I believe, that my colleagues, and particularly my gay colleagues, know what I think about sexuality. I don't need to not wear that lanyard. Like, I can wear that lanyard and they know I disagree with them. And I've heard other people who actually just wear it because it's the easiest thing to do. So I think people do reach different conclusions. I think compelling someone. I was asked the question recently, can a company compel you to wear a rainbow lanyard? And I think the answer is no.